Welcome. I am so excited to be here. Welcome to Rogers State University. My name is Don Raleigh. I get the honor tonight of moderating this program. We have an amazing mix of students, staff, faculty, community members. Folks have traveled a little bit as I look across this group. Thank you for being here. We think this is very monumental for us to tell the story of how Rogers State University was kind of created and how it formed. And we're really joined by the folks that really were very instrumental in making it happen. In your programs, you're going to see a bio of each of them. I'm not going to spend the time there because I want you to be able to hear from them and hear the stories. We had lunch not too long ago, and my biggest challenge tonight is going to be corralling everything on our timelines to keep us on target, because we've got a number of things we want to cover. So I'm not being rude. I'm going to just kind of nudge them to, hey, let's move on. So we really appreciate you being here. One of the things that you also see in your program is there is a kind of a timeline of the history on the Hill here. We started out in 1909 as Eastern University Prep School. 1917 it gets closed. 1919 we become OMA. And I think there's some folks here that were participants here on the Hill at OMA. 10,000 boots on the ground, 2,500 that served in either World War II, Korea, or Vietnam. Closed in 1971, we become Claremore Junior College, which also one of the things I want to do tonight is pay a little bit of respects to the folks, or to President Richard Mosier, who was actually the president at CJC, Claremore Junior College, and then later when it was renamed in honor of the most famous Cherokee, Will Rogers, Rogers State College in 1982, he served as the president here. And much of what we've been able to do to this day is because of his leadership and some of the things he laid the foundation for the leaders that you'll hear from later on. So at this time, I'd like to recognize Dr. Mosier. If you'd stand up. We stand on the shoulders of giants, and we appreciate all you've done. And you're going to hear some of the stories today of some of the things that maybe he created or started, and then they were able to build on. So, without further ado, we're going to move forward. What we're going to start with is we want each of the folks here, which is the first and the longest Senate Pro Tem in the Oklahoma State history, is our first person we're going to talk about, and that's Senator Stratton Taylor. We're also joined by President Joe Wiley, who was the first president here at Rogers State University. You're going to hear stories from him and as we got everything created. And then, of course, you all know the president emeritus is Dr. Larry Rice, who served actually from about 17, was it 16 or 17? 16 years here. And a lot of the things and changes and the buildings and things that happened were created by him. So what I want to do is we're going to start out with giving each of them a little bit of time to just kind of their observations, kind of get things started. And then we've got about 7 or 8 kind of things that we want to hit on as we go forward. So thank you for being here. I hope you'll enjoy it. If we have time at the end, we'd entertain questions. But thank you so much for hearing this. This, we think, is a very, very important moment for us. And we want to make sure that we capture this as we celebrate our 50th and then our 75th and our 100th anniversary as we move forward. This is important stuff, and we appreciate you being here. So we'll start out with your observations, just some comments, some things that you would kind of like to impart as we get started. And we'll start with Senator Taylor.
Well, the most important thing is to know where we started and partially why we did. And I came here when Dr. Danette Boyle was nice enough to offer me a $150 scholarship. And for a kid from Allowee with 17 students in their graduating class, and I finished in the top 17, then
they can't hear him back there.
That made a difference. And I came and I had the opportunity then to be part of Dr. Mosier's President's Leadership class. And I saw what Dr. Mosier was building and built, which was there's a nursing school here now because of him. There's a television station here because of him, a radio station. There's a number of other things that occurred that he laid a foundation for that continues to exist today. And my interest in creating a 4-year university was real simple. It was the year I was getting ready to graduate from Claremore Junior College, and we had a legislative forum. And we invited legislators from around the area, and I was going to have to make a choice. I was either going to have to go to the University of Tulsa and pay private school rates, or leave a good union job at the Humpty Dumpty supermarket, where I made a lot of fame, and go elsewhere. And I asked them the question, I said, you know, there's not a four-year school in the true Northeast. There's not one in Tulsa. There's not one between Tulsa and Missouri, Arkansas, Kansas. Why can't we have one? And they all harumphed and said, oh, there'll never be one. There'll never be one. And I thought, well, if I ever get a chance, there will be one. And so the way some of it started was this. Dr. Mosier had retired. Roger Randall, a former Senate President Pro Tem and colleague of mine, was president of the University Center at Tulsa. And he was having problems getting OSU to offer meaningful classes in Tulsa. They didn't want to do it. They wanted to have a name there, but they didn't want to have a presence. And he couldn't offer courses under the UCT name. And he came to me one day and he said, what would you think about if we combined Rogers State College and UCT and called it Rogers University? And I said, well, I like the idea. I said, you know, obviously I've always wanted to get some four-year courses in Claremore and then eventually, hopefully, Pryor or Bartlesville. And he said, well, we'd like to be able to offer at least some courses under our own name, and this would allow us to do freshman and sophomore. And I said, well, to do this, we're going to have to get community buy-in. And so we arranged for there to be a vote. And we got the Rogers County Election Board to actually conduct the election, and people with a voter registration card or driver's license or Rogers State College ID could go vote at the Will Rogers Memorial. The voting occurred, and I don't remember the exact number, but it was 80%, 90%. It was overwhelming because there was a hunger for access to four-year education, even if it was going to be incremental here. We combined the schools, and that set off the chain of events. That made OSU nervous. They then decided we've got to break this up because otherwise they might get education in the true Northeast and there might be an outbreak of literacy. I mean, imagine that. And so I remember one day when I was with my former law partner, and who is now the Chancellor of Higher Education, which is kind of ironic, Sean Burridge, and we got a call from the chairman of the State Board of Regents who said, I've got a plan for you. We're going to give you your junior college back. And I said, well, thank you, but we ain't taking it. He said, well, I've got a plan for Tulsa. And I said, that's fine. You guys can go fight it out in Tulsa between OU, OSU, Northeastern, Langston, TCC. But we're going to do our very best to try to create a true four-year school here. And we're going to try and call it Rogers State University. And then to condense this, we had one whale of a legislative fight. Nobody wanted us to be a four-year school except us. The metropolitan newspapers were horrified. Education in the rural Northeast? Oh my God, what would happen? You know, we can't have that. And how dare they? How dare they? With, at that time, 250,000 people in our triangle between here and Joplin and Bartlesville and over to Arkansas. How dare they? Now we've got over 300,000 in our triangle. Why would they think they would be entitled? But we started the fight. I was fortunate. I was in the position of being the leader of the Senate, and I had the community behind me. And I was also fortunate in that Dave Story, who was then the publisher of the Claremore Progress, on a regular basis took after the two big papers for fundamentally not caring about this part of the state. And so we ultimately got the deal. And the deal was there'd be an OSU Tulsa, there'd be a Langston Tulsa, there'd be a Northeastern at Broken Arrow, but they were still making runs at us. Why don't you just be a branch of us? And I said, we don't want to be a branch. We want to be our own institution. And so that's, in a nutshell, the politics of it. It was a brutal knockdown, drag-out fight that was absolutely the most satisfying part of my legislative career. And then, though, we woke up one day and we had a university by name, but we didn't have any accreditation. And that's where this gentleman came in, and I want to brag on him for a minute because Joe Wiley was not my first choice to be the president of Rogers State University. And it shows that, like on so many occasions, I can be very wrong. Because I was for a guy who was the vice chancellor of higher education. I thought he could help me load the money to come up here. But the regents had another idea, and they wanted Joe Wiley, and they were right, and I was wrong. And Joe Wiley, in record time, got us accreditation. Nobody thought we'd have. That was their argument. You won't have accreditation for 10 years, maybe a generation. And we had it in what, 2 years, 3? Something like that, maybe less.
Actually, a year and a half.
Year and a half. You know, but we got it. And then Joe Wiley did so many other things. Built dorms, created an honors program, created a president's leadership class, brought athletics. And then when Dr. Wiley retired, we had Dr. Larry Rice come, who built on that, built us a student center, built us a place where our students could go and have meals, built some more dorms, and then got us, get this, got us degrees in engineering, master's degrees in an MBA, a master's in psychology, and raised money. You know, you've heard some people say that, priests are beggars for Christ. Larry Rice was a mugger for RSU. And so therein is how it has all occurred. And we know that Dr. Raleigh, because when I worked at Humpty Dumpty and I got to the exalted position of checker, he was my sacker. And so I feel like we are in good hands and we have come full circle.
See the bag.
Yeah. So that's the political angle on it. And if there's other comments, as our two esteemed former presidents make them, I may chime in.
Dr. Wiley? I think yours is on.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me okay? Well, that about does it. Y'all ready to go home? Now, Senator Taylor did a great job talking about the politics behind it, and I'll have to say this: had he not been in the position he was in and fought so hard and spent an enormous amount of political capital, this wouldn't have happened. And I think it's going to be years before I think people realize how important his contribution was to this institution. And someone else I'll just mention now, because I probably won't have an opportunity later. Someone that was actually as important to this institution as Senator Taylor was his wife, Dr. Carolyn Taylor. When I came, can you hear me back there? Okay. When I came here, I felt like the dog that chased the car and caught it. And Dr. Carolyn Taylor was extremely helpful. She, even though she was a faculty member and taught full time, she officed in the administration building because her ongoing advice and counsel and support for the entire time I was here was extremely valuable to us. And this facility which actually Vice President Volturo and I began before I retired, and Dr. Rice finished after he came, is appropriately named after Carolyn. So I wanted to mention her. There's a question in what we're going to discuss was to talk a little bit about how we made this transition and made it as quickly, and I'll save most of my comments regarding that for that time. But I will say this, I was the president that immediately followed the individual who had a full-time presence on this campus, and that was Dr. Mosier. And he may not remember this, but he periodically would come to my office, and my assistant at the time said, Dr. Mosier's here in like a few minutes with you. And I said, that's fine. And I always got out my notepad because I knew he was going to give me some advice. And I'll have to say this, most of the time I took his advice. The few times I didn't, I learned to regret it. And he was, as Senator Taylor indicated, he was responsible for creating a geographical area in this community that allowed us to add to it to become a university. The location, the statues on campus, the Nature Reserve Center, the beauty that this campus has gave us the opportunity to do what we were able to do during my tenure here. And I want to follow Senator Taylor in expressing my appreciation, Dr. Mosier, to you for everything you did. I do want to tell one story that doesn't really relate to the transition we made to a four-year university and get our accreditation. It has to do more with athletics, but it's even transcends that, and that's the Hillcat mascot. I think it's typically understood that the Hillcat came about as a result of student input in 2004, 2005, when we were talking about what kind of mascot we wanted. There's a little backstory to that I'd like to tell you that many of you may not have heard. And since the Hillcat is still so prominent on this campus, it may be of interest to you. When we decided to begin athletics at the university, one of the things we had to do was to decide on a mascot and what we were going to call ourselves. So I and my administrative team, we met in my office and we bounced around a lot of different ideas. And one idea that we kind of settled on that we were all happy with. Dr. Brown, who was the academic VP, who is here now, Tom Volturo, our chief financial officer, some others who were on the leadership team. Before I forget, is Brent Ortolani here? There you are, Brent. Brent was I'll have to brag on Brent. He's the best PR marketing person my 40-year career ever worked with. And he is behind much of what you see on this campus. When you enter the campus, the signage at the beginning, it looks like a university campus, doesn't it? Well, that was Brent Ortolani, and I want to express my appreciation, Brent, for everything you did. Now back to the Hillcat. We decided that the name we were going to be were the Roadrunners. Okay? We talked about it. I mean, we're talking about the best minds RSU had to offer, okay? And we decided that the Roadrunners would be our mascot. We would be the RSU Roadrunners. Number one, we didn't want a mascot. We didn't want to be a lion or a tiger. You know, everybody had those. We definitely didn't want to be a zebra because that was already here. Roadrunners are very prominent in this part of the state, and so we thought we'd be the Roadrunners. So we decided, okay, we're going to be the Roadrunners. Well, somehow a student group heard that we had decided on the Roadrunners, and they stormed into my office and said, "We hate that. We don't want to be the Roadrunners." And I said, "Okay, what do you want to be?" "Well, we don't know, but we don't want to be the Roadrunners." And I said, "Okay, you students go, you develop a process, you come up with a methodology, and you decide what you want to be. And here are some guardrails. We don't want to be something that everybody else has in the state multiple times. We want to be somewhat unique, and we want it to have some semblance of being a reasonable mascot for us, but we want there to be some uniqueness." And they came back with us, and they had determined at that time there was only one other institution in the country, in West Virginia, that had the mascot Hellcat. And that Hellcat is a colloquial term that is representative of a bobcat, very similar to a bobcat. And they wanted to be the Hellcats. And so I got the leadership team back together again, and I tell them I've thought about it, and here's what I've decided I want to do. And I said, we're going to be the Hellcats. And so Brent got with a branding firm in New York, was it, Brent? New York City, a branding firm, and they developed what you now enjoy as the RSU Hellcat. And so now you know the backstory on the Hellcat, and that might be of interest. And I'll save the good stuff for later.
I don't know which microphone's working, but how can you top that? I was commuting, I'm going to come back to Dr. Mosier, but I was commuting from University of Tulsa back to Salina, and I saw this billboard said Hellcat. I thought, surely they misspelled it. It should be Hellcat or something. Surely they misspelled that, but no, it was a Hellcat. But let me also begin by saying thank you, Dr. Mosier. I truly would not be on this stage, but in 1979, you gave an opportunity for me to become a faculty member here. And my resume was about that long. It might have had 2 or 3 things on there, but I personally want to say thank you for that. And the first 1979, and then in 1984, I ran for the legislature, didn't get elected. And so in Dr. Mosier's wisdom, he sent me to Pryor. So, but for good reason. The Whitaker State Children's Home had closed. Some of you are mature enough to remember that. And Dr. Mosier saw an opportunity to really establish a branch campus in Pryor, and President Wiley was going to later establish one in Bartlesville. But this massive operation over there that used to be Whitaker State Children's Home, and he saw an opportunity, so we had a chance to go over there and open up the first Pryor branch campus. I'm not even sure we had authority to do that, but we did. And then today, of course, you fast forward, and in 2013, we actually dedicated the new building out in Mid-America Industrial Park. But all of that, and thanks to Mid-America trustees and Sanders Mitchell, the director at that time, it all started with the guy here on the front row, Dr. Richard Mosier. So I wanted to say thank you for that. And also, people ask me, well, why did you get your doctorate in whatever it's in? And I said, well, because that's what Dr. Mosier would agree to pay for. So that's what he suggested to Danette Boyle, and who tutored me, that we might want to get a PhD or an EDD or whatever, and so we did. And if I remember, Dr. Mosier would reimburse you for 6 hours after you passed the course. He's pretty shrewd. So we commuted over to Stillwater and finally got a degree. But without that, I would not have had the opportunity to be at the University of Tulsa for 17 years. I certainly would not have had the opportunity to come back here. In a weak moment, they hired me back in 2008. I left here in 1991 because along the way, I did get myself elected to the legislature, as they said, and when I told Senator Taylor, he said, "Why would you want to do that?" But that was another conversation. But anyway, I was here from 79 to 91, and it was really learned a lot during those years, and then went away to University of Tulsa, came back in 2008 as president, and had an opportunity to build upon the things that Stratton Taylor and Joe Wiley and Richard Mosier had begun. And so we still had the first athletic director, Ren Baker, and so I inherited a really good foundation, but we didn't have any money. I'd left a very wonderful private university that had a lot of money in those days. In 2008, about the time that the finances in Oklahoma went south again because they were based on oil and gas, and get here, and this building's about half finished, and so we had some challenges, but through the years, people realized and appreciated the dream that Stratton Taylor and others had for this facility on the hill, because we've been on this hill since about 1909, if I remember my history, and it's always been a special place. But it's even more special today that I got to be a part of it, and my late wife Peggy, we got to be a part of taking this just a little bit farther down the road, because the foundation was laid for a great university, and we were able to raise a little money, and we have some great by the way, faculty, thank you for telling your students to be here tonight to fill up this room. You give them extra credit. So a round of applause for the faculty for filling this room. So thank you. Thank you. And the coaches did the same thing, so thank you, faculty. And no doubt the administrators probably suggested that it'd be a good time to come and hear a few old dinosaurs talk. But anyway, I have really, really enjoyed my 16 years here. It's wonderful to look back and see what we accomplished. Mr. Volterra and I, we were going through a list, and I gave Steve and Lindsay a list of the buildings that occurred during my 16 years, the new buildings or renovations. And Mr. Volterra said, well, you forgot about, we built a new campus in Pryor, we moved the campus, we renovated Bartlesville, and a few other things along the way. And yes, I had forgot about all that. But anyway, I have been very blessed to be a part of this. I'm talking too much. We're going to give it back to our moderator, and I can't say enough about Don Raleigh and Angela. And so, Mr. Moderator, Dr. Raleigh.
Thank you. You all see my issue here. It's going to be a challenge to keep us on, but honestly, this is exciting stuff, and you get taken back, and you kind of hear some of the backstories. Really appreciate the wisdom each of them bring to the panel tonight. I want to dig in a little bit more to the politics, and since President Rice, you were actually a legislator during that time. Of course, Senator Taylor, this first question is really kind of toward you, and you kind of already set that table and kind of laid out the big groundwork. But now fill in a little bit of maybe the backstory or some of the deals that were made and the attempts to make deals and some of the things maybe that were maybe not so well known that might kind of just fill in the gaps a little bit. And we'll start with Senator Taylor.
Well, it was fundamentally, again, nobody wanted us to get anything. They just wanted us to go away. And they wanted us to return and be happy to being a 2-year institution. And so it was, one of the nice things about a bicameral legislature is you may be able to pass something through the House, or the governor may support something, but it still has to go through a Senate. And I was fortunate enough to have a community that backed me strong enough to allow me to get into the position of being the leader of the Senate, and then to have colleagues who would stay with me and allowed me just to say, no, we're not going to do that. And so it goes back to, I let them fight it out in Tulsa, whatever they decided they wanted to do. And a great ally for me was David Boren. David Boren and I had a long-term relationship anyway, and we were friends. And he was very helpful to me during the fight. But he also had his own motives, and that was basically he wanted to keep OSU at bay as much as he could and not let them have Tulsa to themselves. And so together I said, okay, then there needs to be an OU Tulsa if there's going to be an OSU Tulsa. And that's how it all came about. But it was a Rubik's Cube, if you will. Every day there was some crisis. And we didn't get into this, but initially we were placed under what's now known as the Regional University System of Oklahoma Board of Regents. That's who governs Northeastern, University of Central Oklahoma, Southeastern, East Central. And that was the compromise that I had to accept for that first year. But that was not a good location for us. Their idea was they didn't want anybody to do anything unique. They didn't want anybody to do anything different. And if we'd have stayed under that board, we wouldn't have gotten, first of all, I don't think the accreditation as rapidly as we did. And secondly, I don't think we would have ever gotten programs with an MBA or with a master's in psychology or engineering programs. And so the next year was phase two, and that was get us moved to a board that would fundamentally focus on football and leave us alone. And that was the University of Oklahoma board. In that as long as the football program was doing well, they didn't really care what Joe Wiley was doing up here. And so Joe Wiley ran with that, and Tom Volturo, who's here, Tom Volturo one time said, if you find a new pot of money and it's 100%, Joe Wiley will spend 125% of it before the day's out. And so Tom Volturo had to kind of shuffle the money around and did a fabulous job at that. And that's another unsung hero for it. But moving to the OU board was a critical component because we didn't need to be micromanaged. And that was what was happening. You had regents on the other board that would show up at their respective institutions and kind of sit with the president during their day at work. And that's never a good plan. So there's some of the politics.
Dr. Rice, being in the House, any comments there?
Well, the most important thing is the House sure trained a lot of great senators, wouldn't you agree? And of course, I served in the House with Dr. Carolyn Taylor before, but her name was Carolyn Thompson. She was from Norman area, and she and the senator had not met up yet. But anyway, in the House, we were very supportive. Of course, I was from Pryor and had been teaching here. I wasn't at the time when all this started happening. I was already at the University of Tulsa, but I was able to help a little more since I was not part of Rogers State College. So it was enjoyable to watch Senator Taylor, and again, had he not been in the position he was in, and we had support from around the state, including now Dr. Carolyn Taylor and Dwayne Stidley and Sean Burridge and many others. I remember Senator Cullison. There were people that really understood the need for an educational institution up here. And I'd be remiss if I didn't give you a 30-second lesson in history. This opportunity up here on the Hill started in 1909, and it's always been a little bit of politics that kept it alive. It was Eastern University Preparatory School of 1909-1917. There was not a system of higher education. The chancellor got mad. Then chancellor got mad at the local House member and just vetoed the funding. So it closed. 1917 to 1919, reopened. A couple of years later, Oklahoma Military Academy. Fast forward 1971. Those of you remember the Vietnam era, if everybody was anti-anything, so certainly a military school did not have much hope. So it closed and was not destined to be reopened, but the former congressman and again, the Senate Pro Tem, wasn't he, Stratton? But was here when OMA closed, Senate Pro Tem Clem McSpadden, and he went to bat, and finally, along with, there's another backstory where Dr. Mosier and a very bright attorney had to come up with some money to put into the general ed fund, but we got to reopen. The chancellor said, never going to reopen up there. So they convinced him to let us open the Claremore Junior College. He said, don't you ever think you'll have a four-year school up there? And that chancellor's long dead, and I can quote his name, E.T. Dunlap. It's like E.T., he should have went home sooner, but no, that's not true. That's bad. But
he was no friend up here.
But anyway, we can say those things because I don't think any of his family's around anymore. But that's just kind of the backstory. But every step of the way, and then you fast forward to when Representative Taylor was in the House and saw that the need, and then Senator Taylor. But every step of the way, there had to be a little bit of political help to keep this institution alive on the Hill. And it's alive and well today because of Allie Seifert. So be sure I'll put in a plug for her. She is the first Rogers State University graduate to serve in either House and Oklahoma Senate. Of course, Senator Taylor was a Claremore Junior College alum. And so, but every step of the way, we've had to have a little bit of outside help, but that I get the benefit of coming along in 2008 and being able to honor Dr. Mosier's legacy, also stand on the shoulders of all these other giants that made it so much easier for me. All I had to do is just vote green on the House and make sure that everything Senator Taylor wanted, it happened. And he would do the same for me. He would do the same for me.
Excellent. Well, and I think we've kind of heard a lot of the politics pieces, but let's talk a little bit about the transition in the accreditation piece. So as you said, you've chased the car, we caught it, now what do we do? There's another piece of that is we're going from a 2-year university to a 4-year university. And that has faculty that have already, been established there. Now you're asking for a 4-year, so you're bringing in people. That culture there, how did you handle that? How did you navigate the existing faculty, the new faculty, getting the accreditation to happen? That's a tough piece for a president. Talk a little bit about that, President Wiley.
Sure. Yeah, when I arrived on campus, here's what we were facing. Rogers State College was an excellent 2-year college. The faculty were geared towards associate degrees, 2-year programs. Most of the students were typical community college students, many of them adult learners, often part-time students, not necessarily full-time. Had a daycare on campus because so many of them brought their children to campus while they came and worked on their degree. And we needed to maintain that community college function for no other reason than the fact that we could not instantly become a university with 4-year degrees. We couldn't just snap our fingers and make it happen. And we still had to have students and programs and be able to draw tuition and things along that line. And so when we came in here, we had a commitment to continue to maintain a strong cadre of 2-year programs from now on. And in fact, today RSU still has excellent 2-year programs to offer and meet an unmet need. And then we started looking at what we needed to do in order to get our accreditation. Before we could really begin to go forward with 4-year programs, we had to be fully accredited at the 4-year level. We were given permission from the accrediting agency in Chicago to start a program or two just to see if we knew what we were doing. And so the first thing I had to do was build an administrative team that would be able to do this. And we were very fortunate in all my years. I knew excellent people from all over the state that were the best at what they did. And so we were able to put together an administrative team that knew what they were doing. Some of them are actually here tonight. I introduced Brent Ortolani a minute ago. Dr. Ray Brown, I saw come in, was our first chief academic officer, and he had been the president of a community college himself. Tom Volturo, who was an experienced financial guru who had been an assistant state auditor for the state of Oklahoma and then chief financial officer at a university. And we were able to bring Dr. Danette Bull was already here, was an experienced fundraiser, and others that could help us make this transition. The trick we had to pull off was how would we be able to, and frankly, one of the biggest fears I had was how would we be able to maintain a high quality 2-year faculty, bring in a large number of faculty, most of whom would have their doctorate in their teaching discipline, to begin the process of building 4-year programs. How would we be able to do that in a way that we would not create a 4-year faculty and a 2-year faculty, an us versus them mentality. And I'll have to say that fear turned out to not be a fear. The faculty that were here embraced the 4-year mission wholeheartedly. They were well respected by the new faculty that we brought in, many of whom had their degrees and their terminal degrees and were ready to teach courses at the baccalaureate level. That single factor probably had as much to do with our success in such a rapid time frame as anything, is the commitment that the current faculty that, for lack of a better term, I inherited when I came here, had to this institution. And many of them went back to school and got their doctorate in their teaching discipline, and they continued to support their 2-year programs, but also then support the 4-year programs. We were able to develop a 2-tier advancement program for our faculty, for those that exclusively concentrated on the 2-year programs and those that were in the 4-year programs. And so we began that process, and we dealt with having to hire those faculty as quickly as possible, and we were able to do so because we knew that the faculty would make the difference in whether we were accredited or not. Yes, when the accrediting team comes in, they have to know you're financially sound. They have to know that you have administrators that have some semblance of an idea of what they are doing. But the faculty are the ones who make or break that accreditation process. The other things that we had to begin to think about, obviously this could not all be done immediately, but before we could truly be a university and more than just having accreditation, we had to create a culture that would encourage and be able to recruit traditional age college students to the campus. We needed high school seniors graduating from high school and choosing Rogers State University as their institution. Now, there again, we had to wait until we had the programs to offer, but we had to begin to create a culture to do that. Well, those things relate directly to funding, facilities, and I said a minute ago, the faculty. And so we started working on how we were going to be able to do that. Without housing on campus for our traditional age college students, it was going to be a problem. Without a library resource that would support 4-year programs and the scholarship of our faculty had to be done. We had to do some of the things that I mentioned in my opening comments regarding when you enter the campus, it looks like a university as opposed to not looking like a university. And so during those first few years, we spent most of our time, effort, and money in creating that culture, creating the facilities. The Stratton Taylor Library, Senator Taylor was absolutely a godsend during those first few years. He was able to secure the funds to build the library on campus. Vice President Volterro pulled his magic and worked with Dr. Boyle and the foundation, and they sold revenue bonds to build the original apartment complex on campus. And so we were able to do all of that. And in April of '09, about a year and a half later, I called our liaison with the North Central Association, the accrediting agency in Chicago, and I said, "We're ready." And he said, "No, you're not." And I said, "Why do you think we're not?" I spent a few minutes talking a little bit about what we had done. And he said, nobody can be accredited earlier than 5 years. And I said, well, we can't wait 5 years. We have programs ready to go. We have students that we believe will consider us if we are able to get our accreditation. And I said, we're ready to go. And he said, well, I can't stop you from filling out the paperwork to have a visit, but it's highly unlikely you'll be successful. And so they came that spring and early summer and were blown away by the commitment they saw in the faculty, by the financial resources the university had been able to acquire through efforts of Senator Taylor, through the support of the RSU Foundation, and through the bookkeeping that Vice President Volturo had accomplished. And I think one of the things that they saw was they saw an administrative team that had the ability to take the institution forward. And so the accreditation process is as much about what the visiting team feels you're capable of doing as it is about what you have already done. And so we were very fortunate, and we were in August, I believe, received our official accreditation, and in the fall of '09, we actually accepted students into a fully accredited four-year university, Rogers State University. And one other little side note, your initial accreditation is only for 5 years. Typically, a university gets accredited for 10 years. And so they came back in 2005 for the 5-year accreditation visit. And when that was finished, we were fully accredited for 10 more years with no follow-up, no reports. And it turns out we were the only regional university in Oklahoma that year that got 10 years without any follow-up or further reports. And so the bottom line is we needed faculty, facilities, and funds, and we were fortunate enough to be able to acquire those, and having a faculty that were committed to working with each other, the new ones with the old ones, so to speak, and committed to the process. Before I hand the mic back, I would like to say, are there any faculty here that were here when I came?
That was going to be my question. Stand up.
All right, stand up. I see Bob Willis. Yeah, okay.
I think I heard all the rest.
Yeah. The other faculty came afterwards. I won't ask how many of them were here before I left because they probably wouldn't want to admit it. Right. So anyway, that's our story, and certainly if you have time for follow-ups, you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them then.
Well, I think you're starting to see the dominoes that had to fall, and the support from so many different areas, and the structure and the culture and the funding and all those pieces. Let's shift a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about Pryor and Bartlesville, but before we do, I'd like Senator Taylor to talk about, you mentioned earlier that there was a lot of folks trying to make deals. Where did everyone else want us to be a branch for them before we were able to create what we end up now having Pryor and Bartlesville? Tell us a little bit about the back dealings there briefly.
Well, the chairman of the board, the State Board of Regents, the Board of Regents that has the coordinating authority over all institutions, was a very close friend of mine. Very close friend of Dr. Wiley's, good friend of Dr. Rice's. John Massey. John had been on the board for a long time and stayed for a long time after that. And John really, really, really wanted us to be a branch of Northeastern. And Dr. Larry Williams, who was the president of Northeastern, who had been a close friend, and Dr. Wiley had served under him when he was president at Southeastern State, they kept hitting me up for just be a branch, just be a branch. TCC came over. Why don't you just stay a 2-year school and be a branch of us? Think of what we can do for you. And I fundamentally told them, I said, I understand it, I appreciate it, it's nice. If I were you, I would be trying to make that sales pitch as well, but we want to go carve our own path. We want to have our independence. And so that is the overtures that were made. And I understand why they made them, but it would not have been the right thing for us. We would not have the programs that Dr. Rice brought to us with the chemical engineering, with the masters in psychology, the MBA, some of the others. And I also want to say one other thing about politics. If you don't think it matters, it does. And it matters because that's why we are a 4-year institution.
Yeah.
But it also matters because that's why we're going to have a STEM building. Because Dr. Rice alluded to it, Senator Allie Seifert, first RSU grad to serve in the Oklahoma Senate, did the unthinkable and got a $10 million appropriation for the STEM building. Kevin Easley Jr., in his first term as a Cherokee councilman, got $4 million from the tribe. 2 young future leaders delivered. And that's always been the history for here. And they're going to continue to do that. And then Dr. Rice, as I say, went around and hustled money here and hustled money there. And he and Dr. Raleigh recently closed it up with a $4 million anonymous donation so that we're going to have a state-of-the-art STEM building because of those 2 core investments from Senator Seifert and Councilman Easley.
It is always interesting to hear all the backstories because he's exactly right. It's why we really, those votes matter, those politicians matter, those folks that support us really do matter. Let's talk a little bit about, briefly, because we are going to have to be a little more brief. I wanted him to have the opportunity to kind of tell the story because those pieces are really all important. It's kind of weaving a fabric here. But let's talk Pryor and Bartlesville a little bit. So we'll start with Dr. Wiley briefly. What started the process of how we're going to have a satellite campus? And then Dr. Rice, maybe with some finish-ups on that.
Well, I think Dr. Rice probably have more to say on that than I do because Pryor was we already had a campus in Pryor and Bartlesville when I arrived here. They weren't in the facilities that they are now, but we had a campus, and one of the things that we did after we received our accreditation was look for opportunities to be able to expand our outreach to those communities, and so we were able to do that, and we were given a 9-story building in downtown Bartlesville that we had hoped would be more productive for us, but it turns out that it's been more of a boondoggle, hasn't it, Tom? In terms of, yeah, but it did provide us an opportunity for more exposure in Bartlesville because where we were then at was woefully inadequate, and so we were able to do that. But those campuses were already there, and I know during our time, my time here, we primarily concentrated on the Claremore campus because that was what would be judged in terms of our accreditation. But then basically after 2004, 2005, we began to see what we could do to expand our outreach to those campuses.
I'll digress just a little bit. In 1985, as I mentioned, Dr. Moser asked me to go to the old Whitaker State Children's Home, which had been acquired by the Oklahoma Military Department. There was a lot of buildings, and because of a children's home, there was a lot of acreage. And so I went to that facility and showed up, and they gave me an office and maybe a phone. Well, I think the Claremore Junior College paid for the phone, but they gave me the education building on Whitaker State Children's Home. It used to be an elementary. Prior public schools they taught the K-8 or K-6 there. So they gave me that building. That's where I started having classes. It was a great building, except the chalkboards was about this high, you know. And I know some of you have never heard the word chalkboard, but chalkboards were for elementary kids. But we started in that building, and then later, under Senator Taylor's leadership and myself, we were able to build 2 different buildings on that campus that the Oklahoma Military Department allowed us to have. Sometimes they would say, well, we built that building for you, but I'd say yes. But there was a couple of legislators that put that money in your budget, in the Oklahoma Military Department budget, for you to build those buildings for us. And Dr. Wiley, there's too many Rileys and Wileys, but Dr. Wiley actually built the second building as we appropriated money. And so those buildings did not go to waste. When we started having conversations about moving the campus from downtown proper out to the Mid-American Industrial Park, those conversations went on for years. But I kept telling then Administrator Sanders Mitchell, we don't have any money to move. And so finally, right before he retired, he took me down to a little restaurant. He liked to eat fried fish on Fridays. And so he said, well, what if I just built you a building? If I get my board? And I said, well, I'm sure the OU board would probably allow us to do that. And so he talked to his board. I talked to our board, which was the OU board, and they said yes. And so the Mid-America, sometimes called the Oklahoma Ordnance Works Authority, that's their legal name, the Mid-America Industrial Park trustees agreed to allow Sanders Mitchell, the administrator, to authorize him up to spend $10 million. Actually, a little bit. He didn't have a cap at first, and he told me to go design it, so I got the faculty and staff to design it, and it was a little bit too much. Yeah. And so he said, you're going to have to pare that down, and Senator Taylor was in there behind the scenes saying, so anyway, Senator Taylor knows all these backstories, but so we had to pare it down to $10 million. But at the end of the day, the campus in Pryor was fully funded by the Mid-America and trustees of $10 million. Then the academic folks had to go back to North Central. By the way, we're moving. You had to get everything moved, addresses and accreditation. But today we have that beautiful facility there on a 99-year lease. The goal was for me to acquire ownership of that, but Sanders retired. We haven't got there yet, but there's a nice lease, I don't know, $10 a year or something, but a beautiful facility. And we're fortunate to have Dr. Riley in place, because coming out of that K-12 atmosphere, he'll be able to expand upon what we offered prior. It's a beautiful facility. But Bartlesville, President Wiley is correct. It's sort of like a white elephant. We've even tried to give it away. You can't give a state asset away, but we tried to. Mr. Voltaire was once an auditor. I put that in there in case he's still listening. But you can't give a state asset away, but we tried to say, if you will take this building and give us free rent for an equivalency of whatever we can sell it for, we will do that. Because 9 stories, and part of the back, when we acquired that building, the backdrop was that then administrators in Bartlesville had agreed to the parking's issue. Beautiful old building, but there's no parking. And so they agreed to help with the parking. Well, that administration, the city, and so forth, they went out of office, and there's still not a place to park. And so I know that Dr. Mark Razors had to deal with it, and Voltaire had to deal with it. So, but that's the whole issue right there, is that there's no parking, and it makes a beautiful call center. 9 stories. The top floor used to be the Masonic Temple Lodge, but anyway. We had an opportunity to move out with Career Tech at one point in Bartlesville, but we never could sell the building, and so we have great hope that the current president of RSU will be able to get that done.
So if there's any realtors in the audience here, if you want to talk to me later, I'll be very, very interested in that as well, as you might have heard. It kind of makes me think, as I'm hearing all these deals, how much food was consumed in all these deals. I wonder how many deals happened at the Hammett House and all around this area.
Let me tell one 30-second one. Actually, the deal that finally sealed it all was at Molly's Landing. And in those days, Molly's Landing was open for lunch. And going back to Regent John Massey, he said, we need to have lunch. And I said, well, let's go meet in our secret place, in our secret room at Molly's Landing. And we went in the back, and he said, I want to make one more run at you to be a branch of Northeastern. And I said, I want to make one more run at telling you no. And I said, I love you very much. And he says, I love you very much. And I said, do we have a deal? And he said, yes. And so Molly's Landing was where it was finally sealed.
Very cool. Very good. All right, we're going to kind of do a little small wrap up, but I want to talk about athletics real quickly. Because if you're going to have a university experience, I think that's kind of the front door to the university. It's exciting for us to be able to go to the games, see our students. Our student athletes, we just now set a department record, 3.87, I think, Dr. Ratcliffe, and I hear all of our students just doing an amazing job, and it's an opportunity for us to have them shine. And they come here as scholar athletes, and we want to see them not only do well on the field or in their participation in sports, but we also want to see them really excel and go out doing very well in their whatever field they've chosen. So that was an important piece. Maybe Dr. Rice, I don't know, maybe.
I want to lead an intro into it.
Okay.
I want to lead an intro into it. I was cool to the idea. I wasn't opposed, but I just wasn't sold on it. And Dr. Wiley said, we've got to have an athletic program. And I said, okay, that's why you're the president. And I said, then let's go forward. And he did, and he hired Ren Baker to be the athletic director. And to tell you what a great hire that was, Ren Baker is now the athletic director for a Big 12 school, the University of West Virginia. And he also hired Ryan Bradley, who's now in the athletic department at the University of Alabama. But if you're an athlete and you're at Rogers State University, it's because of Joe Wiley.
Well, the only thing I'll add to that is athletics serves a role like many other activities at the university, like the honors program that Senator Taylor mentioned, the President's Leadership class, and on. You have to have those kinds of things to help you create that culture that will encourage traditional age college students and build a support for the institution in general, whether they're a student or not. And so we did athletics like we did most things. We started small. Ren Baker, yes, I hired him as my athletic director, but he also had to serve as the head basketball coach because we didn't have enough money to, do like they do now.
Tell us where you found him.
I found him. He was a middle school teacher in Valiant, Oklahoma.
You can Google where Valiant is.
Yeah. Well, say it this way. There's some good people come from southern Oklahoma.
That's right.
That's all I got to say.
That's right. Yeah.
So anyway, so we started small, and I did promise Senator Taylor we would not try to field a football team, and. But he's right. He wasn't. He hated to see us go off in that direction. But I think in the end he realized that it would help the university in terms of its recruiting, build support and loyalty, and it's I think certainly been beneficial. And you've made the move to Division II, and that's great.
Yeah, why don't you talk a little bit about that transition from NAIA real quickly to Division II?
And I'll be brief, but, and I need to shout out to my partner that's no longer here, Peggy. She was here 16 years, unpaid, and just loved what she did here. And before that, there's another secret group on campus. Are there any Cheeto girls here? There's one or two. That's a secret organization that you all don't even need to know about. But they took Peggy in, made her feel so welcome, and a big shout out to Jake Skidmore back there and for continuing Peggy's cooking school. But athletics, I'm the only president that got to preside over a national championship.
Yet.
That's right.
That's right. I just wanted to throw that in.
Hey, they just threw the gauntlet down, coaches. You hear that? They just threw the gauntlet down.
But it's been wonderful to see the academic program, and again, because of what President Wiley had done to establish it, it was fun, and we just kept adding to that. we still want to add some more sports. I can't say we, I'm not here, but I said this. But anyway, we added a few sports under my tenure and built some facilities. And you may often wonder, how did these things happen? Well, Dr. Elwell was in there negotiating and made sure that we built an adequate amount or renovated an adequate amount of academic buildings as well. But we were able to do some things in athletics. And this Thursday, we're going to do the crown jewel, the small crown jewel, and that is the indoor practice facility. And again, some of these donors are from Tulsa that if it hadn't been for athletics, they wouldn't be giving here. Mike Case built the Case Center, and he wrote the check to build this indoor practice facility. The athletes had to raise the money for the nets and so forth. But I want to say that about athletics. You're in the newspapers. Well, what used to be, you're on social media every day, not because you're a medical research school, which is very important, or any of the other things, but athletics typically put you in people. And so we've had some successes raising money because of sports. And I witnessed that firsthand at the University of Tulsa. And one more thing about the faculty, when I came from back here in 2008 from the University of Tulsa, and I looked at the pedigrees of this faculty, and I'm not saying I knew a lot, but at the University of Tulsa, there's some serious pedigrees. I was there. When I came here and saw the pedigrees, I said, my gosh, these men and women could go anywhere in the world to teach. But they wanted to teach here. And I'm grateful for that because I've got 2 grandkids that's graduated and one's getting ready to graduate. But it's a special place. And it's because of our faculty and staff that make this place work. But I would ask these, well, how come you're at Rogers State? It was either because they had roots in Oklahoma or they wanted to start a program. Generally, that's the 2 answers. And these individuals come from big universities, and they have just done a remarkable job of putting Rogers State University on the map academically as well as in the athletic world. And I'll never forget being in Denver, and our RSU softball team beat a little school from Los Angeles, Dominic Hills. They didn't know where Claremore was either, but we didn't know where Dominic Hills. But anyway, that was a special moment. But I've been to watch some of the other opportunities, the other sports to play for national championships, and it is just. And I'm always thrilled to say, look at their athletic accomplishments, but also look at their GPA. I would always report to the OU Board of Regents what our athletes, they always had collectively probably the highest GPAs of any collective group of individuals that were graduating. So it takes good faculty. It also takes coaches that recruit good students and an athletic director that's got a PhD. I'll shut up.
Speaking of that, last Friday I actually reported to the OU Regents exactly that our scholar athletes, and Joe Constiglione actually took note of that, so appreciate that. Mm-hmm. All right, we're going to wrap up. Last question. A lot of very interesting pieces. We could really be here for a long, long time. Let's now talk a little bit about the future of RSU and maybe what your perceptions were. So maybe a 2-part question. It's been 25 years since we founded RSU. It's grown into a regional center. We're actually the only public residential university in the Tulsa region. If you think very closely about that, that's a unique opportunity. A lot of things going on. But thinking about economic development and culture and our position here in this area, how does today's RSU match with maybe what your perception and maybe from even an alumni here from Claremore Junior College, where we've came, but what was your perception of what you thought it would be and then what you think it is now?
Well, I did not think that we would have some of the things that we have. I did not think we would be having a STEM building like we're going to have. I did not think we would, if you lived in the dorms when I lived here, you would never have believed the quality of the dorms that exist now. Dr. Mosier, you could have been called a slumlord. And I did not think, I never thought in my wildest dreams we would have an engineering school or an engineering program. Now, having said that, I did think we'd be a little bigger, but there's 2 things that happened. One, the legislature quit funding higher education like it used to. And so that creates a problem because if there's not funding, there's not going to be students. And secondly, there's been what I call the demographic time bomb. There are fewer students every year graduating from Oklahoma high schools. Recent article in the paper pointed it out that we're graduating about the same number that we were 10 years ago, and we've had a decline, a steady decline. There's fewer males going for higher education. If you go look at the demographics, there's a lot greater female population than there is male population. There's a little bit of indication that's changing. Dr. Rice started, Dr. Raleigh is continuing. We are now going back on a growth spurt, and so I am optimistic about that. But if you'd asked me, what did I think we would be talking about here on this date when we started the school, I didn't think we'd be talking about engineering programs, STEM programs, or some of these other things. And so it's been a very, very great success story.
I think the only thing I would add to that, I think Senator Taylor is exactly right. Like many of you, I was a first-generation college student and first person in my family to go to college. I think there are, believe it or not, are still a lot of our young people are still coming to us as first-generation college students. They don't have, many of them do not have the breadth of experiences that probably many of your children had, travel opportunities, things along that line. But they're extremely intelligent, they're extremely independent thinking, and they're hardworking. They deserve as good of education as anyone else from a big city. And I think that's the real benefit of a school like Rogers State University, is it provides that opportunity for young people, primarily from this region of the state, to go and get a first-class education that will take them anywhere they want to go. There are no limits to where they can go once they choose here. They should not have to move out of the state in order to get the kind of education they want to get. And I think the growth of this institution, since I left under Dr. Rice, and I'm sure it will continue to grow under Dr. Raleigh, I think will just provide more and more opportunities for our students. And I think that 15 years from now, we won't recognize all of the benefits that this institution has provided, and wait till more and more RSU alums are out there having graduated and been in their careers for 15, 20, 30 years, then they are going to be remembering this institution and supporting it. Just like Senator Taylor was so beneficial to us in our early years, RSU is now providing graduates, as he mentioned, that are now going into the legislature, going into business, going into other fields, that they will be able to then be able to support RSU in the future going forward. So I think the opportunities are limitless, to be honest with you.
And I'll be very brief, but the 16 years that I was here, I got to witness students who graduated here. Some of them are here tonight. They went to law school, they went to medical school, they went to pharmacology school. A few of them wandered off to become veterinarians, but that's a joke. In fact, one last year. But dentists, they also went into business and IT and banking, and they're counselors, they're masters and PhD in counseling and English and so forth, and the best is yet to come. We are just 25 years old. I've often thought I probably won't be here 25 years from now, but this place will be totally different when those alums that are out there and they want to reinvest, because I would always give them a little speech to the President's leadership class and the honors. You need to pay it back. Someone helped you pay. We're very proud that most years 50% of our students graduate debt-free. And that's not always the case, and we kind of get lumped in with the other schools that have big debts and high debts of students that graduate. Then my final comment is that with, and it's allowed unless the statutes have changed, that this institution can have a terminal degree, that we can have a PhD or some program with a PhD to have one terminal degree. It's there for every regional university, and I'll predict that the current president will have it done in less than 5 years. That's all I got to say.
Hey, man.
Well said. And to be unscripted, and we're at 75 minutes, which was exactly our target, I'm very pleased, gentlemen. You guys did great.
Miracle.
We only skipped 4 or 5 questions. Trust me, it's all good. I really, really, really value each of them really being willing to spend the time to convey and talk about the history of this. This is a very special place. I got my first concurrent hours at Rogers State College. It just had changed. I actually taught in the old white building behind Walmart in Bartlesville. I actually taught a little bit with Keith Martin here on campus, still in Loshbaugh, which is why we needed the STEM building. This is an amazing place. And I think sometimes when we're students, we don't realize what a precious thing we have. You have faculty and staff, and some of them are still here teaching that started this place when it was, basically created as a 4-year. They care deeply about their students. They pour into their students. They know who their students are. And as you talked about, we've got so many students that are going out after they graduate and being very successful. The best is yet to come. We are starting to offer now a secondary education degree. We're going to be an education presence in this part of the state. We need to be an education presence. We're going to continue to have education in engineering that we're going to expand. We are right in the dead center of workforce as far as the needs and being able to meet the needs for most of our manufacturing and all of the needs that they have in this region. We are going to be able to partly be able to supply that. Some of the very largest announcements of new industries coming into the Port of Inola, into Pryor, into the Claremore area, the Tulsa area, those folks are calling us and asking how can we meet their workforce needs. So exciting things to come. We've got a few minutes, and this is, as I said, we'll just take what we can. Does anybody have a question from the audience? Maybe somebody that's been here a while, or, okay, we have a question right over there. Do we have a microphone, Steve?
We'll give you our microphone.
Yeah. There we go. We got one. We got one coming.
While he's taking that over there, I want to ask something. For those of you that are faculty, staff, and students here, were classes dismissed? Was school let out any last week?
They were all.
Those of you who were here when I was here, no, I never let school out, right? My attitude was this. I lived right behind here on campus. My attitude was, if I could make it to work, so could you.
The current president actually goes sledding with the students. That's how this works now.
You guys spent the last 75 minutes telling us how you guys built up RSU from what it used to be. Is there anything that, any programs or initiatives that got away from you that you want future administrations, future Hillcats, the faculty to work on going forward?
Two things. I always wanted to start women's wrestling. We didn't have a building, and because that brings students. All the high schools have women's wrestling, and there's nowhere to go. And so I never could get a building to practice in. And then secondly, selfishly, for my kids and grandkids, I'd like to see, some more advanced degrees in the psychology, sociology, and I put a plug in for Dr. Elwell and Dr. Taylor to get that started. But I'd like to see more, because obviously healthcare is a driver. Mental health, it's not going to, those demands are going to be there. So I'd like to see us have more strength in the mental health degrees, as well as more teacher prep degrees, and that terminal degree. It may be an MD, it may be a PhD, but I know it's going to happen. But that's just my 2 cents.
I think there is a need. I know I took a few moments before tonight and looked at the catalog to see what all new programs were here. I think there's a need going forward for baccalaureate degrees in more science area than biology. I think a bachelor's degree in computer science, a bachelor's degree in mathematics, physics, and chemistry, with what's happening in northeastern Oklahoma, would be very beneficial and something would be supported by students.
Okay.
I would want to expand the healthcare role. Healthcare is not going away. It's always going to be there with you. And we should look at becoming the school that does some of the alternatives that the rest of the world engages in, whether it is acupuncture or whether we should be trying to pursue getting a chiropractic degree or expanding on maybe a physical therapy degree or some of those types of programs. But I would want to do some things in healthcare if we can.
Yeah.
Okay, one more. I got one more. I forgot this one, but the head of the OU Health Sciences has got a PhD in pharmacology. He pulled me aside and he said, we need some bachelor degree pharmaceutical technology type, pharm techs, bachelor's degrees, because he said, we won't be able to afford, people will not be able to afford pharmacies. They'll have one actual pharmacist, but they'll have a whole bunch of techs. And he said that's a degree that Rogers State needs to start.
One more question. All right, yeah, one more.
So a lot of you men have talked about the culture on campus, and I know a lot of men and women here are involved in Greek life on campus. So I just wanted to know your thoughts. Like, did you envision Greek life coming to campus, and maybe even your thoughts on expansion into campus?
Okay. Yes, I did, because again, I come from a culture at the University of Tulsa where on any given day, the sororities and the other Greek life was a big part. And so I was really thrilled when RSU had the opportunity to start the Greek life on campus, and I think it will grow. I think that's a part of it's a great recruiting tool to say that you can have a traditional college experience, and we're the only public supported institution in the Tulsa metro area where you can have that, so you can live on campus, you can play sports, be in Greek life, or all the things that go along with that. And then shamelessly, I'll say that my grandson helped start the first fraternity. It was great.
And along the lines of what we should continue to be doing in the future is what we're doing with our cyber teams and their competition is outstanding. What we do with our gaming program and our students that participate in the video game competitions is outstanding. And I remember when I told Dr. Wiley I wanted to promote getting a video game design program started, and he said, we don't need pinball. And,
I am that old.
I said, Dr. Wiley, it's not for you and me, it's for the next generation.
Well, that is excellent. And honestly, you're going to have an opportunity for those of you that in the audience. We are going to fast track a new strategic plan. We're going to start, actually pretty well already have started. So over the next few months in the community, you may be asked to be a part of providing thoughts and ideas of where we should go next, because we are just beginning. You hear a really amazing stories of all the things, but as Dr. Rice pointed out in his history lesson, there were a lot of points across the last 100+ years where education on the Hill was really a tough fight to even get it to have it happen. So we're going to continue to do that. We're going to continue to seek your input and find out what's next for RSU. I want to say thank you for everyone here tonight. I really want to say thank you to Senator Taylor, President Rice, and President Wiley for taking the time, President Mosier for being here tonight. You have a long history here of people that were very committed to this university, to this place on the Hill. This is a very special place. And students, I hope you heard that. I hope you heard in the stories and in the fights in the back room, and maybe at a Molly's Landing, where all the things that happened to create the opportunity that you have right now. People poured in, so first generation, and for students in this region, can have a top-notch, amazing education with the opportunity to go out and do anything else in the world. So thank you for being here tonight. Thank you, gentlemen, for all of your participation. Have a great night.